What's up everybody, welcome back. So we have our inventory system pretty much set up, and before we continue making any changes, I would like to turn it into a component so we can add it to different projects as well. So this is going to be a little bit tedious and boring, and you might wonder why I actually chose to do it this way. Multiple reasons. First of all, I already started developing this project before I decided to turn it into a series. And I didn't really think about adding it to the multiplayer project at that time. And also it really happened to me in real situations where I just created something in a project, and later I found out it would be really cool if I was able to move it to another project. So it actually happened to me quite a lot of times that I had to do this in real life, so I wanted to actually just show all you guys that it's possible to do. Although it's a little bit tedious, you just have to be methodical about it, and then it shouldn't be really hard. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna start turning this into a component. If you like the series, please consider leaving a like. If you want to get your hands on the project file, please become a member of the YouTube channel or become a Patreon, and then you will get access to the premium channels in the Discord, which also give you access to some downloads. So let's just get started. So we're going to create 3 different components, one for the controller, one for the character, and one for the game mode. And in there is going to be all the logic that we already have here right now. So the benefit is that then we can migrate this to another project, simply add those components to the correct actors, and then we are pretty much good to go. Really small setup needed in the character to set up some overlap events and things like that, but migrating this to another project will be really easy once this is all done. So we're going to start with the game instance, and if we open this up, we immediately see we have a problem because in the game instance we cannot add components. So what we're going to do for this one is make sure that we move all this stuff to the game mode component. And in this case that doesn't really matter, because in the game mode we're actually calling all of the game instance stuff. So it's kind of being handled from the game mode anyway. So the first thing we're going to do is right click, create a new component class, and then create an actor component. And I'm going to call this my BP inventory component, and then for the game mode. Oh nice, I have caps lock on. There we go. So BP inventory component, and then for the game mode. And we're going to open this up, and then we're also going to open our game instance. And the first thing we're going to do is copy all of the functions. So we can simply right click on the function and then copy it. Go to the inventory component, on the functions right click and paste the function. So this will just create it. That's good to go. And now we need to go through the function and make sure that all of the variables in here are created as well. So we can simply right click and create variable. So we want to do that for the game world save slot, and for the save game, create variable as well. And then we should be able to compile without errors, and we have the first function done. So then we're going to simply copy the next one from the game instance, copy it, go back to the inventory component, right click and paste it. And again, just run through it to make sure that all of the variables in here actually exist. And we're going to compile to make sure that everything is working. And then we're going to go back to the game instance and grab the last function in here, also copy it and paste it on the component. And again, all of these variables exist, so we are good to go over here. And it actually compiles, so that's good. Now on the game instance, we don't have anything in our event graph, so for now this is pretty much good to go. And the next thing we want to do is go to our game mode, and we're going to start doing the same thing. So let's open up our third person game mode. And the first thing we want to do in here is also copy all of the functions. So as I mentioned, it's going to be tedious and boring, so we're going to have to do a lot of copying and pasting. So let's grab the first function, and then we're going to go to our component and in there paste it again. And we want to make sure that all of the variables exist. So we're going to create the ones that don't exist, and local variables inside of a function will be created automatically. So you don't have to worry about those. So in here we created the saved pickup actors, the pickup actors info and the game instance variable. And all of the other stuff should be good to go. So if we hit compile, we don't get any errors. So we can continue with the next function, and we're going to copy that and paste it in here as well. So everything in here already exists. So we can simply compile to make sure, and then grab the next function, copy it, go back to the component, and we're going to paste it. And again, everything in here is good to go. So I'm just going to continue down the list, paste it in my new component, and this is actually a big one. So in here we have the saved container actors. So let's create that one. Then first I'm going to go all the way to the back, because over here we have the saved container actors info. So we also want to create that one. And then I think those should be everything. So as I mentioned, local variables will be created automatically, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. So we can grab the next function and let's copy it and paste it inside of our component again. So I think for this one we're good to go. Yes, there's nothing in here to create. So let's grab the next function, copy it and paste it on the component again. Let's have a quick look, and everything seems okay in here as well. So just hit compile. If you don't get any errors, you should be good to go. So we're going to grab the spawn dynamic loot function and paste it over here as well. So that should be good. And then we have the last one, save container contents. Let's copy it and paste it. And everything in here is good to go as well. So compile and save. So we have this stuff set up. Then we want to make sure that we replace all of the calls to the game instance, because we're not using that anymore. So we want to make sure we're on the component for the game mode and not the old actual game mode. And in here, we're going to right click the game instance variable and find the references. So we want to replace them. So let's double click it. Over here, we're calling the function on the game instance, and we simply want to call the one we created on the game mode. So we can replace it, update saved pickup actors. So we can simply drag it in over here and replace the pins. And get rid of the game instance one and just move to the next one. So this is also saved pickup actors. So we're simply gonna replace all of them, so we don't have any references to our game instance in here anymore. So again, saved pickup actors, replace the node. And get rid of the old call. So over here we have update saved container actors. And get rid of the old one. And again, container actors. So call the one from the component, plug everything in, and get rid of the call on the game instance. And we're gonna move on. So this is for the saved container actors again. Oh, damn it. There we go. And there is one left all the way at the end over here. Update saved container actors. And let's move this one over and delete the old one. There we go. So now if we search for the game instance, there shouldn't be any references anymore. So we can get rid of the variable in here. And that should be cleaned up and good to go. So we can still compile the component without any problems. So that's working as well. So now we want to take care of event begin play. So we're going to go to the third person game mode. And we're going to copy all of event begin play except for the actual node. So let's copy it and go into the component and paste it in here. So we have our third person game instance. We can get rid of this. So we can remove the setter and the cast to it. We're not actually using that anymore. And then over here we have our initialize game world save. So we created this function on the game mode. So let's replace this call as well. Make sure we plug everything in. So that was double clicking. There we go. And get rid of the old call. And then if we move further down the line, so over here again, we have a game instance reference. So we want to get the actual save game world from the game mode. And from here, we're going to set first time loading map. So we want to set this one to false. And then we can just plug in the save game world into the save game to slot. And we want to get the save slot from the game mode as well, instead of from the game instance. So plug it in over here. And then we can get rid of the game instance reference. And this should work as well. And then all the way at the end, we have a call to our container with the refresh contents. So if we double click on this function, it should open our container. And in here we have a reference to our game mode. So we're going to disconnect it. And then for this event, we want to change it into our inventory component game mode. So we're going to change the actual input, and then we're going to drag off the input again. And we want to call our add item to container function. And we want to replace this call over here. So we're going to move over the pins. And then we can get rid of this one, and we're actually calling our component now. So we can compile and save it. And then we want to go back into our inventory component for the game mode, and the self pin should be connected. So if we compile, this should work. If you clicked compile earlier and you have an error, you just want to right click, refresh the node, or get rid of it and drag a new one off here. So this should take care of the game mode begin play as well. So now let's see what we want to do next. So we're going to go back to our original game mode, and in here we're going to remove the entire begin play event. So that's gone and we don't need it anymore. Now we need to make sure that we grab all of these functions, and we're going to search all of the references because we need to replace these calls with the ones on the actual component. So we can simply right click a function, find references. We don't care about the references on the actual game mode, so we can ignore this, but we want to click the little binocular sign over here. And every blueprint that's calling it that's not the third person game mode or the inventory component game mode, we need to change. So in this case, we don't need to do anything for this function. So we're going to move on to the next one, find references, find all of them. So this one actually has a call from the throwable item. So we're going to double click this one. And then we need to replace this with the component call. So how are we going to do that? We're going to simply drag off the game mode here, and we can get a component by class. Over here, we want to select our new component. So that's the inventory component game mode. And then we can simply drag off here and call our add saved pickup actor. And replace the pins, so the BP pickup, and let's grab the execution over here. So we don't need the cast to game mode anymore. Plug this one over here as well, and we can get rid of this. So that's another benefit of using the components. We don't actually need to cast to the class. We can simply grab the actor and then grab the component directly. So that makes things a little bit easier. So let's get rid of this stuff. We don't need that anymore. And then let me see, we actually wanted to fix the call to function in here. So we go back to the find results. That was the add saved pickup actor. So that's what we just did. Okay. So compile and save. And then we're going to go back to the game mode and search for the next function. So remove saved pickup actor, find references, click the binocular. And in this case, it's being called from the character as well. So let's double click this one. And over here, we also need to make sure that we have a reference to our game mode component. So let's go to our begin play first, go to the event graph. And over here we have begin play. So we're simply gonna make sure that we grab the reference to our game mode, and we want to make sure that we are the server if we do that. So first let's plug in a branch over here and check if we are the server. And if we are, we can simply get the game mode. And from the game mode, we're gonna get a component by class. So we want to get our inventory component game mode. And we're gonna store this as a variable. So promote to variable BP inventory component game mode. And make sure that we plug it into the true pin. So now we can actually work with it. And we need to replace the call to our remove saved pickup actor. So we're going to go to the add item to inventory, and now we can simply drag in our inventory component game mode and remove saved pickup actor and replace the call over here. Get rid of the game mode, and that should be good to go. Compile and save it, and then go back to the character, game mode, third person game mode, and we're gonna search for the next function. So this is called from the container. So in here, that's the refresh contents. So we already did this one. We changed the input and fixed this one, so we can ignore that. And then the next one is in the third person character. So we just created the new component reference, so we can simply drag it in over here, and we're going to add item to container and move over the pins. So now we can get rid of the old call. And as you can see over here, we have one to the remove item from container as well. So let's just grab that one while we're at it. So we can grab the component game mode. And in this case, we're going to remove item from container. And again, move over all of the pins. So we can get rid of this stuff and move in our new call. Compile and save, and go back to the game mode. So we're gonna search the remove item and click the binocular. So that's the third person character. We just did this one, so that should be good to go. Go back to the game mode. So let's make sure we actually did all of these ones. So there is one in the character, game mode, and the container. Okay, so we have all of those fixed. Then we're going to go to setup container actors and find all of those as well. So those are only in the game modes, so that's good to go. Let's look for the next one. Also only in the game modes, so that's good to go. And the last one, so that's in the BP container. So let's double click this one. And we can actually replace this call. So we can simply drag off the game mode here, get the component by class. And we're going to look for our inventory component game mode. And then we can replace this call. So the save container contents. The container is a reference to ourselves. Move over the execution pin, and then we can get rid of the cast. So we need to plug it in over here. Okay, so that should be good to go as well. And now we have all of our calls to the functions fixed as well. So if we go back into our third person character, over here we still have the reference to our third person game mode. So let's find the references, and the only thing we're using it is to set it on event possessed. So we don't need to do it anymore. Let's get rid of the setter and the cast over here. And we can plug in the controller cast directly over here. Get rid of the game mode. And then we can actually get rid of the variable in here as well. Compile and save it. And then we need to make sure that on our game mode, So the third person game mode, we actually add our newly created component. So we're going to add a new component and look for the inventory component game mode. And add it to your game mode, compile and save it. And then we can go back to, we're already in the game mode, sorry, and we can start deleting all of the functions. So we can simply get rid of all of the functions in here. And also all of the variables, because all of this stuff is on our component right now. So compile and save it. And I think we should be able to test this to see if it's actually working. So let's hit play and see what happens. Nothing should really change, so we should be able to just continue where we left off. And if we go to a container, for example, we should still be able to move stuff around. And everything over here is still working, so I think we actually did a good job and we didn't actually break anything. So that's good to go. We have our game mode component set up. We got rid of our game instance stuff, and the next thing we're going to do is do kind of the same thing for the controller. So for the controller, we're going to start by creating a new blueprint class, and we want to create an actor component again. So this time it's going to be my BP inventory component controller. And let's open it up. Now the first thing we want to do for the controller is make sure that we go to the class defaults and set the component replicates flag to true. So otherwise we're going to run into problems later. So make sure you enable that, and then we want to set up a small begin play event so we have a reference to our player controller, because we're going to use this component to create the HUDs and things like that, the UI, so we need a reference to our controller. So this component is going to be added to the player controller, so we can simply right click and get the owner of this component. And then this will return the player controller, so we want to cast it, and I'm going to cast it to the default player controller. So not the third person player controller or a player controller that we created. We simply need to get a controller reference to spawn the HUD. We don't need the actual custom class because we don't have any special variables on there that we need. So just cast to the default controller and then promote this to a variable. And we have a begin play we can work with, so compile and save. And now we want to start copying stuff from the player controller to our component. So let's grab our player controller in here. And we want to start by copying the functions again. So let's grab the first function, we're going to copy it, go to the component and paste it over here. And again, we want to make sure that all of these variables actually exist. So we're going to create them, the inventory slot name and the save game. Right click, create. If we hit compile, no errors pop up, so we didn't miss anything. Let's go back to the controller and grab the next function. So let's copy this one and paste it in here. So we want to create the HUD again. And this should be good to go. Let's compile and save. Then go back to the controller, grab the next function, copy it and paste it in our component. Again, let's create these variables. So the player inventory. So over here we have show mouse cursor, and we actually need the player controller for this. So we can get rid of this setter and we want to drag in the player controller variable and then set show mouse cursor. Plug it in over here, and for this one we can get rid of the self reference and plug in the player controller over here, and that should make it work. So the third person character reference, we're just going to create it for now to avoid getting any errors, and for the rest this should be good. So compile and save. And then grab the last function from the controller, so copy it and paste it on our component as well. And in here all of the variables exist, so we're good to go. So for the UI show in-game HUD, we create the widget, and in here we want to plug in our player controller. And we want to do the same thing for the show inventory. So again, for the create widget node, plug in your player controller. compile and save that stuff. Now we want to go to the event graph, and we also want to copy all of this stuff from the player controller, but we're gonna skip our event possessed for now, and we want to combine begin play. So let's start with begin play over here. Let's move event possessed a little bit to the side. We're not gonna worry about that one. So event begin play, I'm just gonna grab all of this stuff and copy it, and then go to my component, go to the event graph, and for now I'm simply gonna paste it over here, plug it in, and not really worry about anything else for now. So if we compile, we get an error for the local controller check, so we can fix it by plugging in the player controller into the target, and that should get rid of this problem. So that's done. Then we can go back to the controller. So we did begin play, and now we want to grab all of the other events, and we simply want to copy them and paste them onto our component. So we have all of this stuff in place as well. And over here, for the leave inventory menu, we actually have a show mouse cursor and set input mode again. So we need to grab our player controller and make sure that we replace these ones. So set show mouse cursor. So we're not going to show the mouse cursor. We can plug it in over here, get rid of the self reference and plug in the player controller. So that's fixed. And then for now, this should be good to go. So let's compile and save it again. So we have our functions and events in place. So now we want to go to the third person controller. So back to the original one. And we're going to search all of the function calls again to replace them with the component calls. So let's start with load inventory, find references. So we do not care about this stuff. We're going to click the binocular. And this is only on the component and the controller. So we're going to ignore this one. And we're going to continue to the next one. So find references. Again, nothing to fix over here. So go to show inventory menu. So this one is actually being called from the character. So let's double click it. And now we need to make sure that we have a reference to our controller component in here before we can replace this. So let's go to event begin play. And we have the component for the game mode in here. So let's make sure that we also grab our inventory controller component. So how are we going to do that? Well, we can get the player controller, for example. And then for this one, well, let's do it differently. Let's just get the controller. That should work as well. So get controller. Already. So this actually gets it from the pawn self, so not from a player index. Then from the controller, we want to drag off here. And we want to make sure that it's valid. So we're going to grab an isValid node. So in multiplayer, the pawn might not be possessed by the controller yet. So we want to make sure that actually happens. So if this is not valid, we're going to drag off here and delay until next tick. And plug it back into the isValid node. So this simply waits until the controller is valid. And then we can drag off the controller and get a component by class. And we want to get our inventory component game mode. Controller. So inventory component controller. And this one, we're going to promote it to a variable. So that's our BP inventory component controller. And now we can start replacing the calls. So let's go back to the search result. And we needed to replace the show inventory menu call over here. So we can simply drag in our inventory component controller. From here, we can get our player inventory widget. So widget blueprint player inventory. And then we can call the correct function. So UI show inventory menu. Oh, we actually need to drag this one off the controller component. So sorry, show UI show inventory menu. So that's to replace the lower call over here. And then for the player inventory, we want to plug it in the remove from parent node, so we can get rid of player inventory from the controller. And the leave inventory menu call, we also want to replace that, so we're going to drag that off the component again, and then leave inventory menu, plug it in over here. So the third person controller can be deleted. And now at the beginning over here, we also want to replace this. So let's grab the component controller with the player inventory, paste it over here, plug it into the isValid node, and get rid of the controller one. So that should be good to go. Compile and save, and go back to the controller to search our update newsfeed function. Or by the way, let's double check the search results. So the other ones were for the controller, so that's good to go. Let's search for the newsfeed. And again, we need to go to the character. So let's double click it. So we just created the component reference, so we can simply drag it in and call the correct function. So client update newsfeed. And make sure that we plug in the correct values. So this one is for added items. Let's copy this and get rid of the old stuff. And then for the search result, there's also one in the remove item from inventory, so we can paste it over here again and then move over all of these bins. So items added is false in this case. And we can get rid of the old call. There we go. So that one is fixed as well. Let's go back to the controller. And now in here we need to check the events on the event graph as well. So let's right click this one, find references, and let's see if they're called from other blueprints. So we have the third person character, and that's calling this event. So let's fix this one. And we have the component reference in here, so we can simply replace the call with the save inventory to save game. And move over the pins. Get rid of the controller. And there we go. So the other ones are in the controller and the component. So that's good to go. Let's move on to the next event. So these are button presses. That should be good to go. And then we have leave inventory menu. So find references, click the binocular. Again from the third person character. So let's go in here and replace these ones as well. So grab the component, and from the component we want to leave the inventory menu. Plug this one in over here. And then we want to get the player inventory widget. So get player inventory. And plug it into the remove from parent. Get rid of the old stuff. And that's good to go. Then I think there was another one, so let's double click this one on the character as well. And we already fixed this one a minute ago, so that's good to go. And then this one is on the controller, so we don't need to worry about that one. Then we have one on the player inventory, so let's double click this one as well. And we want to replace it, so we can simply drag off the owning player over here. This returns the player controller, so from here we can get a component by class. Make sure that we grab our inventory component for the controller. And then we can simply call the leave inventory menu. So we're going to get rid of the cast, so we want to plug it in over here and then move this pin over, and that's fixed as well. Compile and save, and let's go back to the controller to look for the next event. So that's our update inventory grid. Let's find references of this one. So we have one in the controller container. Let's open this one up. And for now, I'm going to leave this one alone. This is handled by the interacting players array that's set by our interface. So we're going to get back to this one if we fix up the character. So we're going to ignore the container for now. So let's have a look at the other search results. So we also have one on the character. So we want to replace this one. let's grab our component and call our HUD inventory grid update and move everything over again. So this is player inventory. Get rid of this, and we can copy these nodes because there is another one in the player. So let's paste it over here. So this is also player inventory. Let's copy move over the content pins and the execution. Get rid of the old nodes. And there we go. So that should fix these results. This was for the controller and the controller, so that's good to go. Then we have our container opened event, so let's look for this one. So that's on the third person character as well. So let's replace it, grab our component, container opened, and move everything over. Compile and save. And then let's see if there's any other ones. So this is controller. Then we have the set interact hint. So let's look for this event again on the character. So we're going to replace all of these ones again. Grab the component and set the interact hint. So this is enabled. Let's move over the text pin and get rid of this. There we go. So we can copy and paste it over here, move over the execution pins and make sure that it's not visible. Get rid of the old call and get rid of the controller. So we need to plug in the component in this call to avoid an error. Compile and save. And then this function is taken care of as well. So go back to our controller to check for the update newsfeed. And again, there's calls from the character. So over here, we already replaced the call. So this is from the inventory component. So that's good to go. And then the next one also is good to go. We already took care of that one as well. So this is controller, this is controller. So we shouldn't need to worry about any of those. So we actually did all of the event graph over here as well. So right now we should be able to go back into our character, and if we search for any references to our controller, so there's only a setter left, and that's on event possessed, so we can simply get rid of this one. We're not going to need it anymore. And then we can also get rid of the controller variable in here. So let's delete this one as well. So if we search for it, that's probably in the container. So let's double check that. So that's in our BP container. We're going to take care of this when we update the character component. So for now, in the third person controller, in the third person character, we can actually get rid of this variable. It's broken anyway. So let's delete it and not worry about it. So the character should compile. This is cleaned up. Then we want to go back to our third person controller, and we can actually delete all of the event graph and all of the stuff in here. So let's first get rid of the entire event graph, and then we can get rid of the functions in here. And we can get rid of all of the variables in here. So we cleaned everything up. Compile it. Now we want to add our new component. So let's add the inventory component controller. Over here, compile and save it. And now we do need to do one small thing to make sure that we can test it. So if we go to our inventory component controller, so for now we need a reference to our third person character on here. So later we're going to turn the character in a component as well. So we're going to change it up again, but to make sure everything is working for now so we can test it, we're going to drag in our third person character setter. And from the player controller over here, we're going to drag off and get the controlled pawn. So we can cast the controlled pawn to our third person character. And then we're going to set it over here. So plug this one in after the controller setter and hook everything back up. So now we have a valid reference over here to the character, and I think, we should plug this one back into the local controller check. Go. So now this should work for a small test. We do need to keep in mind that we didn't fix the BP container, so interacting with containers won't work, but all of the other stuff should still work. So let's have a little look. And right now I'm not seeing my mouse cursor. So we might have messed that one up. So that's for UI, show inventory menu. And we actually need to make sure we enable show mouse cursor in here. So that was just a small mistake. Let's have a little look again. So open inventory. Right now I have a mouse cursor. I can still drag stuff around. I can still drop items and pick them up, hopefully. Yes, that works as well. So I think most of this stuff is good to go. And we have our player controller component set up as well. So as I mentioned, crates will be broken right now, so you can't really interact with crates. We need to fix those when we set up our character component. So we're making nice progress, and I just want to continue by doing the character component in this video as well. So if you're getting a bit tired of all the copying and pasting and you're losing focus or just don't feel like it anymore, just pause the video and get back to it another day or another week or whenever you feel like it. So I'm just going to keep going. So let's right click and create the last component that we're needing, and that's our actor component for the character. So let's create another actor component and call this BP inventory component character. So let's open it up, and again the first thing we want to do is make sure that the component replicates. So go to class defaults and make sure replication over here is enabled. And now we're simply going to start copying the functions from our character to our component. So let's open our third person character and let's start with the functions over here. So add item to inventory. I'm going to copy it and go to my new component and paste it in here. So I'm going to get this warning. I'm going to do nothing and then simply confirm. So we're going to get some issues over here, but we can fix them in a little bit. For now, we just want to make sure that all of the variables are created again. So let's go through the function and create the variables that don't exist. So right click and create them. Oh, really? Thank you. And we're not going to worry about this stuff right now. So let's move on. And I think we should kind of be good to go. So if we hit compile, we get an error for the two functions that don't exist. But other than that, there is no problem. So we should be good to go. So go back to the character, grab the remove item from inventory, copy it, and we're going to paste it in here as well. Again, we're going to do nothing, confirm. So in here, all of the variables should be good to go. So we can go back to the character and grab the last function. So throw item, copy it, and go to the component and paste it in here as well. So for this one, we need to go to the throw item direction and make sure that we create this variable. And the rest should be good to go. So let's compile and save. So now that we have the throw item function copied in here, we can go to the error that it's pointing at. And if we simply right click this node and refresh it, then it will fix the issue. So we have the throw item done and that should be gone over here. So now we need to fix the save current inventory. So if we go to the character, we have that event on the event graph. So let's look for that event, save current inventory. I'm simply going to grab this event for now. So let's move it out of the way a little bit so I know I already dealt with it. I'm going to copy it, go back to the component and then paste it in the event graph. Oh, really? So now we can look for the errors over here and simply right click the node, refresh it, and that will take care of it. So there's 2 of them. So make sure you refresh both. And now if we compile, we do get an error for the open container. So that's a variable that I forgot to create. So simply click it and then right click, create variable, and that should be good to go again. So now we don't have any errors on our new component and we moved over the functions. So that's done. The next step is that we're going to copy over the event graph, but we're not going to copy everything. So we're going to skip event begin play. We're going to skip the overlap events over here for the mesh and the sphere. So all of these. And we're also going to skip the interact event for the interface. So let's move that stuff to the side. So we already did save current inventory, so that's moved to the side as well. And all of the rest I just want to grab and copy it over to the component. So copy it, go to the component event graph, and let's paste it in here. And now in here there is one variable, so that's our inventory size. We want to right click and create it, so we have that one as well. And so the next thing we're going to do is fix the actual interface. So let's compile this blueprint for now. We could have a look at these errors. So that's actually about the interface. So we're going to fix this in a little bit. So let's not worry about it. Let's close it down our character and open our interactable actor interface. So in here we have interact with actor, and that's actually passing on a reference to the character, and we want to change this to our component. So we're going to change this to our inventory component character. Okay, that didn't work. So BP inventory component character. So now we can compile and save it. Close this one down. And after we did that, we want to open our BP container. So let's go to the container. And in here we have our interact with actor event. And now that's actually passing on a component. So we need to disconnect it over here. We're going to grab the interacting players array and we're going to change this variable type into a component as well. So inventory component character. So do we want to change it? Yes, change variable type. And now we need to fix all of this stuff. So if we simply disconnect it over here, then we can plug it into the add unique node again. And if we drag off here from the input, we can plug it in and simply replace the other nodes as well. So over here, we want to set the opened container. And that's going to be a reference to ourselves, so we can move that one over. And then we also want to call our open container. Plug it in, and again, we can grab the self reference for the container. So we can get rid of this node, and we can get rid of all of these reroute nodes. And the old call to the open container. So move this over here. And then right below here, we have container contents changed. So we also want to disconnect the for each loop, plug it back in. So now we have the correct array element over here, and we can call our HUD update inventory grid. Oh, we need to actually, let me double check. So this is our inventory component character. And we need to get our controller. So what we can do over here is simply drag off the array element and get our inventory component. And then we can make the call to the HUD update inventory grid from here. So HUD update inventory grid and replace the pins. So we want to update our world inventory, and for the contents we actually grab it from here. So now we can get rid of the old call, and that should fix container blueprint. So we can compile and save it. And now with the container fixed, we want to actually search for all of the interacting actor references. So we can select the array over here and then find references, click the little binocular, and we want to make sure that we change it in the other blueprints as well. So let's go to the third person character. And as you can see over here, we're having an issue. So we need to disconnect it. And right now it's an inventory component. So we are on the character and we don't actually need to fix this function because we are going to delete the character in a little bit. So excuse me, let's skip this one. But we do need to go to our inventory component GameMode. And we do need to make sure that we fix this one. So instead of getting the wrong array over here, we can drag off the inventory component and then get a copy from index 0. And from here we can call our throw item. So not server throw item, but the normal throw item. And move over the pins. And make sure we enable the isContainer boolean so we can get rid of this one and this getter. And this reference is fixed. So compile and save. And then if we look at our inventory component character, we do need to fix this one. So that's why I was a little bit confused. The one in the character obviously looks exactly the same because we copied it. But we're going to delete this one from the character in a little bit. We want to make sure that on the component we actually fix the reference. So in here we want to disconnect the remove pin. So the interacting players, we can plug it back in. And then we are an actual component. So if we plug it back in over here, it should actually fix itself. And it does. So that's good to go as well. So that took care of the container and the interacting players. So now we can go back to our third person character. And we can make sure that we grab our interface events. So we're going to grab the input action interact and also the server interact with interactable. And we can copy these to our component now. So let's go to the component and paste them over here in the event graph. Confirm we're not going to do anything over here. Because if we have it pasted in and we right click, refresh the node, that will fix the issue. So that's good to go. Then for the interactable actor, we want to right click and create the variable. And then for the interact with actor, we should be good to go if we actually refresh it, because we changed the input to a component and this time we are a component. So this should be good to go. Compile and save it. And we do need to make sure that we search for all of our interact with actor calls. So find reference, click the binocular, and we want to make sure we fix all of these. So let's start in the container. We already took care of this one by changing this to a component. So this one is good to go. And the next one is in the third person character. So that's also good to go because we're going to remove this in a little bit. So we can ignore it. Then we have the interactable interface itself. So that's where we started changing it. So no need to worry about that. Then we have the BP pickup. So let's open this one. We do need to fix this one. So over here, player character, if we compile it, we get an error. Let's disconnect it and look on the add item to inventory from the component. So this should be a component. It is a component. So we should be able to call add item to inventory, and we are. So we can move over the pins for the contents and the pickup and make sure that we set the index over here to -1. And then we can get rid of the old node. And that should be good to go as well. Let's see if there's anything else to fix. So this is on the inventory component character. So this is already fixed. So that should be good to go as well. Now we need to go to our component. So we are, and we're going to set up a begin play in here. So we have the correct references to work with. So we don't need tick. We can get rid of that one. For begin play, first of all, we're going to check if we are the server. So let's grab a branch and we're going to grab an isServer boolean. If we are the server, we want to get the owner. So let's start by getting our owner. And let me double check. So we are the character component. So this will return the character. And from the character, we want to get our throw direction. So we're going to get a component by tag. Component, get components by tag. And from here, we want to select an arrow component. Oh, really? And then for the tag, we're going to give it something like a tag we can make up. So let's call this inventory component. And we want to copy this tag. And then we're going to go to our third person character. So we're actually talking about the throw item direction arrow over here that defines how we're throwing an item. So we want to select this component, scroll down, and then for component tags, we're going to add one tag and paste it in here. So inventory component. So this tag needs to match the one in the component for the character. And then we can get the first copy from this array. And we can promote it to a we don't need to promote it. We already have the throw item direction in here, so we can set it and plug in the result, and that's good to go. Then we need a reference to our GameMode component. So if we click find references, we're only getting it, but we're not setting it. So what we're going to do is we're going to get our GameMode. And from the GameMode, we can get a component by class. So we want to get our inventory component GameMode. And promote this, don't promote it, store it in the inventory component GameMode variable we already have. Plug it in over here. And then the last thing we need is our character component, controller component reference. So we can drag off the get owner. This returns the character. So we can cast this to a character. And from a character, we can get a controller. So if we have the character cast, we're going to drag off here and get a controller. And we want to make sure this controller is actually valid again. So as I mentioned before, in multiplayer, it can happen. The pawn is not actually possessed by the controller yet. So we're going to plug this into an valid node. If it's not valid, we're going to delay until next tick. Plug it back into the isValid node. And then if it's actually valid, we're going to continue. And then we can drag off the controller and get a component by class. So in this case, we want to get our inventory controller component. And then we can store this in a variable as well. So inventory component controller, drag in the setter and plug it in. And that should be our begin play. Now we want to make sure that we have the variables replicated over here that were also replicated on our character. So let's go back to the third person character. And in here, as you can see, interactable actor replication none. So that's good to go. Then we have the player inventory that needs to be replicated. The opened container also needs to be replicated. And then the inventory size is good to go without replication. So go to the inventory component character. And for the inventory, we're going to set replicated. And for the opened container, we're also going to set replicated. And then for the inventory component controller, we also want to enable replication. So select the controller component and replicated enabled. So for the game mode, it doesn't matter. It doesn't need replication. So that's good to go. So we have most of the components set up. Let's go into the character. And in here, so this is complaining about some stuff we're going to delete anyway, so that doesn't really matter. In here, we're going to add the newly created component. So let's add a new component, inventory component character. So that one is in place. Now we have some events on the event graph left, so we have to deal with the overlap events for the sphere and the mesh. So let's do that first. So let's start with overlap sphere. I'm just going to copy everything from here except for the actual overlap events. So I'm actually going to cut it, so not copy it. So Ctrl X and then go to the component character to our event graph, and in here I'm going to paste them. And I'm simply going to create a custom event. So let's create a new custom event, and this one is a begin overlap sphere. And we want to give it one input, and that's an actor. So let's turn it into an actor object reference. And then we can simply plug it back in over here on our component. And we want to do the same thing for the end overlap. So let's create a custom event with an actor input. And this one is going to be end overlap for the sphere. Oh, there we go. So we can plug it in over here. And then if we compile and go back to our third person character, all we need to do in here is drag in our inventory component and call our begin overlap for the sphere. Plug it in over here and plug in our other actor. And do the same thing for end overlap. So end overlap sphere, plug in the overlap event and the other actor. And that's taken care of. So we need to do the same thing for the mesh overlap. So let's just grab everything from those events again. And I'm going to cut it from my character blueprint, go to my component blueprint and paste it over here in the event graph. So it's giving a message over here, but I can't really figure out what node it's talking about. And I don't think there's actually anything missing. So let's just ignore it. And we're going to create a custom event. So this is our begin overlap for the mesh. And again, we need to give it one input, and that's an actor. So we can plug it in. And do the same thing for our end overlap. So create a custom event with an actor input and plug the actor into the comparison over here. So I'm going to call this one end overlap mesh. So with these two events in place, compile and again go back to the third person character to the actual overlap events, and we're going to call those. So drag in the component from the character and then call begin overlap for the mesh. Plug it in and make sure that you grab the other actor from the overlap event, and over here we're going to call end overlap mesh. And again, plug in our other actor. So we are on the character and we can actually get rid of the interface stuff. So let's delete it. That will get rid of the error as well. So we should be able to compile, and it's still giving an error. So that's not really a big deal. We're going to remove this anyway. So we have the overlap event set up as well. Let's see what we want to do next. So we want to start doing some cleanup. So on the third person character for the event begin play, we only want to keep this part where we check for a locally controlled pawn and then remove the interactable detection sphere if we're not a local player. So we're going to get rid of all of this stuff. So that's the components. We don't need references to the component on the character. They're already on the component itself. So those are gone. We already got rid of our onPossessed event. So that should be good to go as well. So the next thing we want to do is search all of our events, functions and variables to make sure that we replaced all of the calls. So let's start with the function. I'm going to find references again, click the binocular. So don't worry about anything inside the character or the character component, but everything else we need to fix. So we have our pickup. Let's double click this one. And we already took care of this one. So the inventory component character is already in place here. So we can ignore that one. player inventory. So we do need to fix this one, and we don't actually have a reference to our character component in here yet. So we're going to start by doing that in the event graph. Let's go to our event construct, and over here we're setting our third person character variable. So we're getting our owning player pawn. We can drag off here and get a component by class, and simply get our inventory component character. So we want to promote this to a variable. That's our BP inventory component character. And make sure that we plug it in. So for now, we're going to keep the character reference to make sure that we don't break too much. So let's just hook it up like this for now. And we can start replacing our calls. So let's go back to the search result. So over here, server add item to inventory. Let's drag in our component and simply replace the call, server add item to inventory, and move over the pins. And then if we look a little bit up in this function, we actually see there's quite a lot of calls in here. So while we're at it, let's just replace those as well. So over here, server add item to container. Let's drag it from the component and then grab the correct function, move over the pins. So we can get rid of the old call, and that's good to go. And then we have two over here at the beginning as well. So let's grab those, server, remove item from container, move over the contents and our execution pins. And I'm missing a few. There we go. Inventory index. So we can get rid of this one as well. And then the last one is remove item from inventory. And move everything over again. So now we can get rid of the third person character as well, and we have everything called from the component. So compile and save and go back to the search results. So let's double click the next one, and this is actually also inside of the player inventory. So again, we can simply drag in our component reference, and let's replace all of these calls. So server add item to container. Oh. And move everything over again. And then we also have a server add item to inventory in here. So let's grab that one as well. So there's no pickup plugged in, and then grab the execution pins. And the last one is our server throw item. So we can actually do that one as well. Grab it from the component and call our new server throw item and move everything over. There we go. So compile and save. Over here, third person character isn't plugged in anymore. So let's get rid of it and go back to our search results. So this is in the character component. So the rest of that should be good to go. Let's go back to our third person character and search our remove item from inventory. So click the binocular, and again, this is only in our character, so no need to worry about it. Then throw item, search references, and inside of the container, but that's not actually a call to this function, that's just a name matching. And then we have the third person character, so we don't need to worry about it. Over here, player inventory, we do need to fix these ones. So again, let's grab our inventory component character and let's replace them. So server remove item from container and move it over. And do the same thing for remove item from inventory over here. Oh, I actually grabbed the wrong node, I think. Yeah, this should have been remove item from container. So let me fix that in a little bit. So first let's grab this one, move it over. Oh, really? So I can get rid of this call, and then I need to make sure that this is actually remove item from container. And then we can move the pins over again. So that should fix it. And then we also want to replace our throw item call. So server throw item. And again, we're going to move over some pins. Oh, really? There we go. And we have our third person character cleaned up here. So let's get rid of it. Compile and save. And we have a few more search results. So double click this one. We already did this one, so that's good to go. And then in the inventory component game mode, so let's double check it. So this is actually a component call, so that's good to go. Then in the character, that's not actually a call to the function, that's just the name matching. Server throw item, so that's the function itself. This is calling the component, so that's good to go. And then add item to inventory has a throw item call, but that's also a component. So this should be good to go. So I don't think we need to fix anything here. Those should be good. Let's go back to the character. And now we need to search the events on our event graph. So let's go to save current inventory, find references, and make sure they are not called from any other blueprints than the character or the character component. So that's good to go. This is character and character component, so that's good to go. Search this one. So this is actually being called from the inventory component controller. So we need to fix this one. So if we go to the inventory component controller, and we need to make sure that we actually get a reference to our character component. So if we go over here, right now we are grabbing a reference to our third person character, and we can simply drag off the controlled pawn over here and then get a component by class. So for the component, that's going to be our inventory component character. And then we can promote this to a variable. So that's our BP inventory component character. And make sure that we plug it in somewhere. And then we can fix the event calls over here. So let's get rid of the third person character references, and we have server load inventory from save game. So let's grab our component and call server load inventory from save game, plug it in, and then plug in the player inventory. So now we can copy these two nodes because there are 3 more of them down here for the clients. So let's delete the third person character with the call to the event and plug in the component. And make sure you plug in the actual inventory and do the same thing for the other 2. And the last one over here. There we go. So compile and save. And let's have a look at the search results. So that should be good to go. Go back to the third person character. So toggle inventory, we don't need to search that one. Open container, let's find references. And that's actually called from the container. So let's go to our container, and we already fixed this one when we fixed the interface. So that's good to go. And then this is on the character and the character, so no need to worry about it. Then we have server close container. And that's actually being called from the third person character, that's not a worry. Then we have the inventory component controller. So let's look at this one. And we can replace this one. So let's grab our inventory component character and call our server close container. Get rid of old one and replace it with the component call. Compile and save. And that should be good. So go back to the character. And now we have the add and remove stuff. So let's search for those ones to make sure that we actually grabbed all of these. So in the player inventory, double click it. It's making a call to a component, so that's good to go. And this one is also good to go. And we don't need to worry about that one. So let's remove, do remove item, find references. So player inventory, this should be good to go. Inventory component, the next one is also good to go, I think, yes. And then we have one over here on the inventory slot. We do need to fix this one. So we are on our inventory slot widget and we can simply grab our component from the player inventory widget. So if we drag off the widget blueprint player inventory, we can get our inventory component character. And from here we can call our server remove item from container. And then move everything over. So the contents and the inventory index and the execution pin. Get rid of the old call and do the same thing down here. So remove item from inventory. Server remove item from inventory and move everything over again. Get rid of the old call, and that means we can also get rid of the third person character. So let's delete it. And that's good to go. So let me see. Compile this one, save it, and go back to the search results. So these ones are on the character, no need to worry about those. So go back to the character and search for the next event. So character BB pickup, this is already updated to a component call, that's good to go. Then the player inventory should be good to go, let's double check it. So we have inventory component call. And this is the character again, so those should be good as well. And then this one should be good as well, but let's make sure. So player inventory, this is a component call. Double click the already next one. So also a component call, and then we have the inventory slot we just replaced, so that's good to go as well. Then we have take all container items. We do need to fix this one. So let's find all references. And over here we have it on the player inventory. So we can simply grab our component for the character and call the correct one. Server take all container items. And replace the call. There we go. And then go back to the character. We have one event left over here, server throw item. So let's look for that one as well. And on the player inventory, but I think we already updated it. So this is a component call. And this one is a component call as well. So that should be good to go. And let's see. So the next thing we want to do is look for all of the variables and make sure we don't need to fix them anymore. So let's right click, find references, and make sure they don't appear in any other blueprints. So this one is good to go. Then we have our player inventory and we do need to fix this one. So let's click the binocular sign. So we do not need to worry about third person character. We do need to worry about the in-game HUD. So let's double click it. So this is for the item counter. It's not really game breaking, but it's not too hard to fix. So let's disconnect the array element over here after the get all actors from class. And from here we can simply get our component. So we're going to get our inventory component. And that's our inventory component character. And from the inventory component character, we can get our player inventory. And then we can simply plug that one into the for each loop and get rid of this one. And that will fix our item counter. So let's compile and save it and then go back to the search results. So in the inventory item menu, we have a reference to our player inventory and we want to fix that one as well. So if we drag off the player inventory widget, we can get our inventory component character. And then from the inventory component character, we can get our player inventory. And then we can simply move over the pin. So we're going to store this one and get rid of this reference. And we actually want to do the same thing a little bit up here. So we have our player inventory. We're going to drag off the player inventory and get the inventory component character. From that component, we're going to get the open container. And from the open container, we can get the container contents. So get container contents. So already, there we go. And then we can move this pin over as well and get rid of this reference. So we have those replaced. Compile and save and go back to our search results. So the inventory component controller that should, oh, that's actually a third person character. So we can grab our component for the character and then get our player inventory. And make sure we move over the pin and get rid of the reference to the third person character. So delete that one. And that's good to go as well. So those are all the player inventory references. So go back to our character and look for our open container references. And I think we already took care of that one. So third person character. So that should actually be inside of our inventory item menu. And we already took care of it over here. So that's why it's not finding it. It's from the component already. Okay, so that's good to go. And then the inventory size, there shouldn't be any references to that. Make sure only in the character. So that's good to go. So we can compile and save it. This is actually our character, so that's going to give errors, but we can compile our component and that should work. So now we can go back to our player inventory. So that's our widget blueprint. And in here, if we right click our third person character reference, we want to make sure that everything for this one is gone. So we only have a setter and we can actually get rid of that one as well. So get rid of the setter and get rid of the cast and then plug everything over here back into event construct. And we can get rid of the actual variable in here and then compile and save it. And we can do the same thing in our inventory component for the controller. So if we go to our event graph, in begin play, we created a temporary reference, but now we have our component. So we can get rid of the third person character and the cast over here. Plug this setter back in over here. And then if we search our third person character, there's no references, so we can get rid of the variable, compile it and save it. So this might actually work. I think we have everything good to go. I'm gonna double check quickly and then we can have a little test. So if you try to test it, it will throw an error for the third person character. And that's because we didn't delete all of the old stuff. So first of all, you want to open your third person character and in here delete everything inside of the event graph, the functions and the variables. But you want to keep event begin play and the overlap events that we created. So we have the overlap events for the components that call our character component events. So you want to keep these events in place and the begin play event that we created. Everything else in the event graph, get rid of it. So this is obviously the default stuff for inputs. You want to keep those as well, otherwise you can't move around. Then you can delete all of the functions and all of the variables on the third person character. After you did that, you want to go to the onComponent begin overlap for the mesh. So not for the sphere, but for the mesh. And in here, we actually want to make sure that we add has authority checks. So we only want the server to run this. So we're going to drag off here and add a has authority node. And only continue if we are authority, and do the same thing for the end overlap and plug it in over here. And then there's one thing on our inventory component controller that we need to take care of, and that's setting the reference to our inventory component character. If we do it like this, our pawn isn't possessed by the controller yet, and the reference will return empty. So we want to make sure that we add a delay in here. So let's just disconnect it over here for now. So after we set our player controller, we're going to grab a branch and we're going to check if we are the server. So is server and plug it in. If this is false, we want to continue like we did. So plug this one in here. If this is true, then we want to wait for our controller to possess a pawn. So we can simply grab our controlled pawn over here. And from the controlled pawn, we're going to get an isValid node. So plug it into the true pin. If this is not valid, we're going to delay until next tick. And plug it back into the beginning of the isValid node. And then if it's actually is valid, we can get our component by class and then store it inside of our variable. And then we want to make sure that we plug this into our isLocalPlayerController branch as well, so that will continue executing as well. So if we fixed all of that stuff, then this should actually work without any errors. So let's make sure we save everything. I'm gonna get rid of my save game. So we're starting fresh. And let's see if this is actually working. So for the client, I'm going to select a save slot to make sure everything is matching up. And then let's just pick up some stuff and see what happens. So stacking still works. And for example, if I use my item menu, I can split a stack and I can drop stacks. So stuff like that is still replicating to the client. So that seems to be working. So let me see, for containers, we can still move stuff around. We can split stuff inside of containers, throw everything out of there, take all items. So for now, I think we are pretty much good to go. Let's have a look for the client and see if we run into any issues over here. So we can move stuff around between containers and clients. That seems to be working. So we can drop some stuff over here. Let's interact with a container to see if we can take everything. That's also working. So I think we have everything pretty much good to go. And we actually have our components set up and ready to migrate into other projects. So let's close it down and hopefully there are no errors this time. And that's working as well. Okay, thank somebody. Okay, so thanks for watching everybody. In the next episode, we're actually gonna move this over to our multiplayer project and then we can start or continue working on it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like and I'll be back soon for more. Talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.